A few years ago, researchers watched a fish do something we were sure no fish could do. It's a cleaner wrasse, about the length of your finger, with a brain the size of a grain of rice. In 2019, a lab put one in a tank with a mirror, and while it slept, marked its throat, a small brown spot somewhere the fish could only ever see in a reflection. When it woke up, it swam to the mirror and looked, then dropped to a rock and dragged its throat right where the mark was, then back to the mirror and did it again. It was working to scrub off a spot it could only have known about from its reflection, from understanding that the fish in the glass was itself. That's a lot to credit a fish with, because knowing you're the animal in the mirror is supposed to be rare. For 50 years, we've sorted animals into two piles, the short list that recognize themselves and everyone else who sees a stranger. Your dog is on the everyone else list, so we assumed was every fish alive. Here's the catch with using a mirror to measure a mind, though. A mirror only ever shows you what you put in front of it, and the same goes for how we read other minds. We're all sure we know what's behind a dog's eyes, or a cat's, or the face across the table. By the end of this, the real question won't be which animals passed our test. It'll be what our test was measuring. To see why a fish pulling this off is such a problem, you have to go back to 1970, and a psychologist named Gallup. Gallup had been watching chimpanzees meet mirrors. At first, a chimp treats its reflection like a rival, puffing up, threatening, checking behind the glass. But after a few days, that fades, and it starts using the mirror on itself, grooming, picking food from its teeth, studying parts of its body it had never seen. To Gallup, that looked like recognition, and he built a test to check. He anesthetized a chimp and painted a red, odorless mark high on its brow, somewhere it could only catch in a mirror. When the chimp woke up and looked at its reflection, it reached up and touched the mark, on its own face, not on the glass, on itself. Touch the mark on yourself and you've shown you know the reflection is you. Gallup called it the first hard evidence of a sense of self in an animal that wasn't human. And for the next 50 years, that plain little setup, a mark and a mirror, became how we decided which animals were self-aware. The pass list turned into a very exclusive club. Chimpanzees, of course, orangutans. Then Diana Rice and Lori Marino marked bottlenose dolphins and filmed them turning at a mirror to inspect the spot. Joshua Plotnick found an Asian elephant named Happy, who lifted her trunk and touched a white X on her own forehead. And then the one that didn't fit the pattern. Helmut Pryor's team put the mark on a magpie, a bird, and it stood at the mirror and scratched the sticker off. Every animal that passed was one we already considered brilliant. Big brains, long lives, rich social worlds. Exactly what you'd expect, the cleverest animals alive. And you've probably noticed who didn't make it in. Your dog, your cat, nearly every animal we live with. They glance in the mirror, find nothing worth a second look, and wander off. Even we don't start life in the club. Dab a spot of rouge on a toddler's nose, sit them in front of a mirror, and for the first year and a half, they'll pat the baby in the glass. Only later, Beulah Amsterdam found it was about 2/3 of children by age 2 will a child reach up and touch its own nose instead. That reach is the moment we each do the thing the fish just did. Look at a reflection and think, that's me. So that's the tidy version. A handful of remarkable animals, plus us, share something the rest of the living world lacks. Intelligence earns you a self. Everyone else runs on empty. Now put the fish back in the picture, because the cleaner wrasse passed the same test. Same mark, same mirror, same reach toward its own body. And a fish doesn't just have a small brain. It's missing the very hardware we decided this took. Remember, the magpie already passed without a neocortex, the wrinkled outer brain we assumed this needed. A fish is simpler still. On paper, one of the least impressive minds here. And Masanori Kohda's team ran it again, and again, and it kept passing. So one of two things is true. Either a fish the size of your finger has some sense of itself, which means the club may not be as exclusive as we thought, or the test we've trusted for half a century was never measuring what we thought it did. and both of them begin at the same crack, in the same mirror. The argument started almost the moment the fish paper came out. Gordon Gallup, by now in his 80s and still defending the test he built, didn't buy it for a second, and his objection was a sharp one. Think about what a cleaner wrasse does for a living. It swims up to bigger fish and picks the parasites off their skin. Its whole job is spotting little marks on a body and removing them. So when Kohda's fish worked at a small brown spot on its throat, maybe it wasn't recognizing itself at all. Maybe it just saw something that looked like a parasite and did what a wrasse does. It's a fair hit, but Kohda's team had been chipping away at it. They tried marks in colors no parasite would ever be. They tried clear marks, physically there but invisible, and the fish left those alone, working only at a mark it could see. Later, a fish reacted to a photo of its own face differently than to a photo of a stranger, which they read as a sign it carries some picture of itself in its head, though that read is their interpretation, not settled fact. But the simple, it's only hunting a parasite story was getting harder to hold. The primatologist Frans de Waal looked at the argument and suggested everyone was stuck on the wrong word. The word was pass. We'd been treating self-recognition like a switch, on or off, in the club or out. But what if it's more like a dial? Degrees of knowing yourself, spread unevenly across the whole animal kingdom, with the mirror test only ever catching the setting turned all the way up. Turn that dial down from where we'd set it, and the animals we'd written off as empty start to look completely different. Start with your dog. A dog glances in a mirror, loses interest, and we filed that under no sense of self. But look at what we were asking it to do. We built the whole test around eyes, around faces, around caring how you look. A dog doesn't live in a world of faces. A dog lives in a world of smell. So Alexandra Horowitz built a version of the mirror a dog could actually use. She gave dogs their own urine to sniff, and then their own urine with an extra smell secretly mixed in. The dogs barely paused at their own, unaltered scent. But their own scent, made not quite right, stops them. They investigated it far longer, the same double take you do at a mirror if your face came back wrong. A dog can tell when its own smell has been tampered with. That's a sense of self. We were just asking the question in a language dogs don't speak. Now turn the dial the other way, toward an animal that's supposedly already in the club. Gorillas, oddly, mostly fail the mirror test, which makes no sense for a great ape, until you think about what the test actually demands. It asks an animal to stare, hard, straight into a face. And for a gorilla, staring into a face is a threat, close to a challenge. The calm, sensible thing for a gorilla to do at a mirror is look away. Give them privacy, gentler conditions, more time, and some gorillas pass after all. Their failure was never really about whether they have a self. It was about manners, theirs and ours. So, after 50 years, where's the line? The clean border we set out to find, with the self-aware minds on one side and the blank animals on the other, it never showed up. What showed up instead was a smear. A fish near one end, a chimp near the other, a dog off to the side doing the whole thing by smell, a gorilla who could but would rather not, and no clean wall anywhere in between. The line we were so sure was out there turned out to be a line we brought with us. But there is one result in all of this that came back sharp and clear and certain. It's just not about the animals. We took our own particular way of knowing ourselves, through our eyes, through faces, through the very human habit of caring about a smudge on our own skin, and we built it into a test. Then we held that test up to every other mind on Earth and asked each one, do you do it the way we do it? And when a dog or an elephant or a fish didn't, we wrote down that the lights were off. The mirror was never really pointed at them. It was pointed at us the whole time. And it did the one thing a mirror always does. It showed us what we brought to it. We went looking in every other animal for a mind like our own. And mostly, we found our own reflection looking back. It's worth keeping in mind the next time you're certain you know exactly what your dog is thinking, or your cat, or the person across the table. That certainty is its own kind of mirror. There's a new question like this one here every week, and the last one was really about a reflection too. Why you can't stand the sound of your own recorded voice. Same trick, just turned inward. If you'd like more of these, a like and subscribe genuinely help the channel keep going. I'm Ponder. I'll see you at the next question.